Hi, this talk is titled Affordability GitHub Legal. If you don't know, GitHub is a product that lets software developers collaborate with one another among teams and across teams. But I'm really just using GitHub as a stand-in for a concept that I would refer to as radical collaboration. So this talk is really about a way forward radical collaboration in the law. So before we dive in, just a quick word about myself and my company. My name is Michael. I develop software at Community Lawyer. We are a public benefit company, which means that we are for-profit, but we also have an equally binding obligation to support access to justice. We are based in Brooklyn. To be precise, we are about like 2 blocks from here at Portland Pacific at Blue Ridge Labs. It's on top of CBS. So if you are in the area or and you want to hang out or get a beer or whatever, please feel free to reach out. We made a lawyer referral service app. It's a custom web app that helps bar associations run and manage lawyer referral services. And I'm happy to announce that as of a few weeks ago, we were live with the Brooklyn Bar Association's lawyer referral service, which is kind of funny because at Docacon last year, which was in Chicago, we had just gone live with the Chicago Bar's lawyer referral service. So I think the only logical conclusion to draw is that Docacon is very good luck for community lawyers. So let's do more of these. And last but not least, we made the app builder, which is probably most relevant to what we're going to be talking about in this room. And that is a web app that helps you make docs and use that. Okay, so here's an ordered list of topics that I'll be discussing during this talk. What I mean by radical collaboration, why it is possible in software, why it should be possible in law, why it happens in software, why it doesn't happen in law, what we can do to make it happen in law, why we should make it happen in law, why it would be a good thing, and then some time for questions and discussion. Okay, so what I mean by radical collaboration. When I use the word collaboration in this talk, I'm referring to a specific kind of collaboration, which is relatively new for humans. And I'm referring to collaboration that is continuous and decentralized, meaning it's happening all the time, and it's happening without being organized explicitly by someone on top. And it's the kind of collaboration that builds systems like Wikipedia, like the Bitcoin network, peer-to-peer file sharing sites, the Linux operating system, Git software libraries. And decentralization does not imply that there is no hierarchy. Like, for example, Wikipedia has admins and moderators that can lock down articles, prevent them from being edited, have the final say on what version of a sentence goes in the article. Open source software libraries have maintainers that can review and accept contributions. But the key is that these systems basically let anyone contribute at any time. There's no gatekeeping. And you'll notice that each of these examples is based around software as a medium for collaboration. And the thesis of this talk is that collaboration in legal should be possible, like it is in tech, and that such collaboration is desirable. So why is it possible in software? Software has 3 special features that make it particularly suitable as a medium for radical collaboration. The first is fluidity. You can use software to solve any problem you can imagine. You can use it to make music, send messages, play games, transfer money, pilot airplanes, edit video, watch Netflix, make statistical models, typeset books, even develop software. Literally anything you can dream of, you can do. It's adaptable. Software ultimately is just text, and it's pretty cheap and easy to make changes to text. For example, it's a lot simpler to add a text message feature to a music streaming app than it is to add a floor to a building or a lane to a highway. And there is 0 cost of distribution. Copying software is free and instantaneous. It costs me the same amount of money to distribute an app to one person as it does to distribute to a million. And so obviously there are a few simplifying assumptions here. Making changes to a decade-old legacy code base is not simple or cheap or easy. Distributing a web app to 1 million people is going to force me to solve some scaling problems, which are not going to be cheap or easy. But the point is to illustrate that software has some fundamental features that enable radical collaboration. And the reason why is that, if you solve a problem, I can copy your solution, make some changes to it to solve a slightly different problem. And so we just collaborated, but no one told us to, no one paid us to, I don't even know you. And if you multiply this by millions of developers over decades, you can kind of get a sense for how the process of collaboration is happening. So, I'd argue that the same thing should be possible in the law. And the reason why is the law is kind of like social software. It's a set of rules that governs our behavior as a society. Of course, computers are much better at obeying commands than humans are, so we need a whole infrastructure enforcement layer of police and judges and courts to manage disobedience. But consider that the law does share with software these three features that make collaboration possible. The law's fluidity lets it solve any problem. If you have too much money in politics, you pass campaign finance laws. If tech companies are hoarding our data, you pass GDPR. Right? Any kind of social problem, you can write a law to fix it. The law, like software, is just text, so you can very easily rewrite it and reinterpret it. And if a million people have the same problem, you just have to write one law, you have to write a million different laws. Now, of course, again, it's not easy to change the law if there is $1 billion lobby funding politicians to, not pass the law. And these examples refer more generally to lawmaking and not legal service delivery, which is probably what we hear more about in this room. But if law is social software, then legal service delivery is like the execution of software, which itself is mediated by software. So it should be subject to the same characteristics. So for example, we get a new law that says you can stay in eviction by filling out Form X and filing it. It's in principle easy to imagine lawyers quickly adopting and iterating and executing and sharing workflows and processes that allow them to quickly fill out that form and submit it and get people, keep people in their homes. So the real point I'm trying to make is that the medium through which the law is created and transmitted and effectuated shares features with software that should afford it the same kind and degree of route of collaboration in principle. But I think if you ask any lawyer, lawyers are not very willing to help each other. Right? So we can figure out why that happens by examining the conditions that allow collaboration to happen in software. So why does it happen in software? So in order to collaborate effectively, you need to have the right tools and the right incentives. And there's kind of a feedback loop here because if you have good tools and the costs of collaboration are lower, and if the rewards for collaboration are high, that's going to incentivize people to make good tools. So these tend to be jointly sufficient for collaboration to happen. So let's talk about tools. So GitHub is the company that was referenced in the title of this talk. They provide they are a provider of a freemium version control in the cloud. And what that is, what version control is kind of like track changes in a Google Doc. It lets you see everyone's changes to a shared code base. So if you have a team of 5 engineers working on the same product, and all of a sudden, something breaks or app is crashing, you can comb through everyone's contributions, revert the code back to a version that works, figure out what went wrong, and then fix the problem. And it's basically what makes collaboration with software possible within teams and across teams. Because you can also use it to host open source libraries, accept contributions from the community, request features, find bugs, everything that makes software collaboration possible because of version control tools. GitHub is not the only one, there are a few others, but it's the most well-known. And it sold to Microsoft last year for $8 billion. So it's a very valuable service. As for incentives, so that's tools. Software developers have the right tools to collaborate. As for incentives, the software industry has 2 unique features that incentivize collaboration. The first is the presence of what I'm going to call siloed verticals, like Airbnb and Spotify, for example. They don't compete for customers, right? Airbnb is providing short-term accommodation. Spotify is providing music streaming. So if there are underlying software libraries that both of these companies depend on, they both have an incentive to improve them. And they do. Airbnb and Spotify each maintain dozens of open source libraries that they each use to contribute to. And they can do this because the better the networking library is, the more business they can both do. And this is a feature that's kind of unique to the tech industry. You don't really see this legal. The second and more interesting thing, I think, incentive-wise, is that success in software is not zero-sum because software businesses are limitlessly scalable. So, even if the two companies were competing, you're not necessarily taking customers from one another. I can get, Uber can get 5 customers at the same time that Lyft gets 5 customers because there's infinite people who need car rides. And so they might both contribute to the same dispatching library because the more efficiently and effectively you can dispatch riders to their destinations, the more customers will both get. And this kind of collaboration among competing companies is not just beneficial but necessary. If everyone started from scratch on every project, then web development would not be possible. And here's a concrete example. So, Community Lawyer's referral service app has a feature where it can determine what county you're in by what zip code you enter. And in order for us to deliver this feature, we can solve some geometry problems based on the shape files you get from counties and zip codes. So do you think that I went to the library and checked out a geometry book so I could solve this problem? No, I didn't. Because someone else solved that problem. There is a software library that's written in the same language as Community Lawyer that has dozens of programmers contributing to it, probably thousands of people using it. So there was just an off-the-shelf Ruby library that solved all my geometry problems for me. Now, why would people voluntarily contribute their unpaid time to maintaining a Ruby geometry library? Because they also need to solve geometry problems so that they can also develop features that you need a geometry problem, the geometry library to develop, so that their companies also make money. And it's simply more efficient to outsource these problems to community volunteers that each has a stake in keeping the solution as up-to-date and effective and performant as possible. It doesn't make sense for each startup to have their own in-house geometry team. And the key thing is that GitHub makes it ridiculously easy to share your work. If I have to call the geometry library's lawyer and sign a bunch of NDAs and contracts, then all of a sudden the alternative of writing my own library is looking a lot better, right? But thanks to GitHub, I just have to write one line of code, and now all of a sudden all of this library's features and all future updates and maintenance to it are available to me for free inside my own project. And you might recognize this as a reflection of the famous 1937 Ronald Coates, nature of the firm. Basically, the decision to do something in-house versus outsource it depends on transaction costs. The transaction cost of doing it in-house versus outsourcing it. And tools like GitHub reduce the transaction cost to 0. But, I've been talking a lot about open source software, but collaboration is not limited to using and contributing to open source libraries. In other words, the cost of outsourcing a service can be more than 0, but it's still a good deal. And this explains the rise of giant software companies that provide one single service exceptionally well to dozens or hundreds or thousands of them. And here's another example to show you just how far this can go. So, as I mentioned, Community Lawyer uses this library called RGO to do some geometry problems. It's free and open source. It's maintained by a community of 21 volunteers. We use this thing called Sidekick to do asynchronous job scheduling. It's free and open source, and it's maintained by a community of 400 volunteers. We use React to build our app's user interface. React is free and open source. It's maintained by Facebook, which is worth $500 billion. We use Docker for microservice deployment. Docker is free and open source. It's maintained by a company also called Docker, which is valued at about $1 billion. We use Ruby on Rails as our web framework. It's free and open source and maintained by a community of 3,000 plus volunteers. And we use dozens more, right? It's dozens and dozens of open source services that we rely on. This is just a small subset. But these are all open source and they're all free. But we also use a number of services that are not open source, which is to say that they're proprietary, and we pay for them. We use Mailgun to deliver email. Their valuation is not clear, but they've raised at least $50 million. We use Rollbar to track errors and bugs. their valuation is not clear either, but they've raised at least $7.5 million. We use Stripe to handle payment processing. Stripe is valued at $22 billion. We use Twilio to send text messages. Twilio just recently went public and is worth about $20 billion. We use Amazon Web Services for a bunch of different things, hosting, compute, DNS. I don't need to tell you how much Amazon is for. So, oh my God. So, you know, we're a small team. Any one of these services alone would take us months or years to build after spending months or years developing the expertise to build them. And so buying them from providers is really our only choice. Now, you might be thinking, wait a minute, this isn't collaboration, this is just capitalism, right? We're just paying for services. And to that, I would respond, yes, you're right. You're exactly right. It's capitalism at its best, right? This isn't third world laborers toiling for a poverty wage. This isn't a single parent working 3 jobs. This isn't an office worker collapsing at their desk. This is specialization, driving down costs, and leaving behind it a trail of open source treasures. Capitalism at its best is collaboration, and I think the reason why is that markets provide tools and incentives for collaboration in abundance. So that's why we see collaboration happening in tech, right? We have the right tools, the right incentives, the right markets. Why doesn't it happen in legal? Well, some tools are there, but not all. It's not entirely fair to characterize the legal industry today as completely allergic to tech. Lawyers have zealously adopted things like email, word processors to reduce mistakes, deliver better service to their customers. But there are no tools that let strangers share legal knowledge with each other instantaneously. The best we have are things like books, practice manuals, and maybe blog posts. But these assets are static. They're not interactive. They don't give feedback, and they're slow. They get updated a lot more slowly than software does. I doubt practice manuals are updated more than once a year, if that. And so we don't have the right tools, and we don't have the right incentives either. The billable hour means that as you become more efficient, the value of each service you provide decreases, each complete service. Imagine you run a law firm that bills by the hour and you're trying to maximize your profit. Assuming that all your lawyers are at capacity, there are only 2 things you can do. You can bill more per hour or hire more lawyers. If you hire more lawyers, that'll provide incentives for them to collaborate, but that's just within your firm, so that's not really around collaboration. If you want to raise your hourly rate, you can only do that if you have no competition. So that provides an incentive for you to treasure all your legal and business knowledge and keep it as a competitive advantage. So there's no way that you're going to share your secret sauce with the rest of the world if you are trying to increase your hourly rate. So then the question is, what can we do to make collaboration happen? So in theory, we just need the right tools and the right incentives, right? Legal is missing those things. So let's talk about Docacon. Docacon is revolutionary because it is an adapter between legal knowledge and code. Up until recently, you could transmit legal knowledge from one person to another using books or classes, but you could not transform it into something else, and now you can, and you can turn it into code. Which means that you can put it on GitHub, you can copy, edit, and run other people's legal knowledge. And really the fluidity, adaptability, and copyability of legal knowledge is only theoretical until it's encoded in a medium that affords it traction. And so Docacon is that tool, and code is that medium. There's a second, there is a very positive side effect of doing this, of turning legal knowledge into code, and it's that it affords you the ability to turn a service into a product, which works by itself, provides immediate value, and can be integrated as a module into a broader workflow or business process. For example, if you publish a practice manual that's full of briefs and case law for bankruptcy, that can't replace me as a worker. My firm's productivity is still going to be bounded by how quickly I read that book and how accurately I understand it. Or if I'm a legal aid clinic with 10 pro bono volunteers, and each one of those 10 volunteers has to read the book, maybe best one of them reads it and explains it to the rest. But look at Upsalt. I think this is like the third deck to. So in case you don't know, but you probably do, Upsalt is a tech nonprofit. They're automating talks on bankruptcy. Their app has to date eliminated, I think, at least $40 million worth of debt. I think Rhonda's not here, so you can't correct me, but they've given countless people a fresh start. And they did it with Docacon. They built an app that turned their legal knowledge into an app that models the law. They distributed the app across the country and got a 10x or 100x improvement in how quickly and accurately we can deliver consumer bankruptcy. And they did it on a shoestring. Their team is tiny. Plus, they're sponsoring this conference, so shouts out to Upsalt. So really, Docacon is revolutionary because it provides both the tool and the incentive to collaborate. I can now use all the existing tools that software developers use because Docacon lets me turn legal knowledge into software, and I can now scale a law firm by converting all my services into products. And escape the bill of lading. So for example, I'm happy to put my divorce client intake on the internet because I'm in New York, so all the divorce lawyers in California can't compete with me, and we can now both contribute to this intake form, and we can both stand to benefit. Quick aside, because I know that a lot of people here are in nonprofits or legal aid. Incentives can exist outside of markets. And if you're a legal aid or a nonprofit, your funding is not based on the market value of your service, but on whatever your funder deems is important, like the number of people you help or the amount of debt you resolve. So in this context, there's basically no downside at all to open source any piece of software because there's no competitive advantage to be gained by treasuring it or reporting it to yourself, right? It's just pure upside. You can get pure upside by letting volunteers contribute bug fixes, features, tests. So just the mere act of turning legal knowledge into software is sufficient to provide an incentive for collaboration for a nonprofit, or if your incentives exist outside of the market. So all legal software that exists for social good rather than making money is now has the incentive to collaborate thanks to things like Unbundled. As for us, we see our mission as augmenting the strengths of Docacon, really doubling down on what makes it revolutionary. So first and foremost is that there is this technical sophistication gap. It's harder to install Docacon, and it's harder to learn how to write Python and Markdown and YAML than it is to model a legal workflow inside your own head if you've never touched programming before. So we provide the app builder to reduce the barrier to entry that is currently block people from doing legal automation that should be doing it. And we found that a lot of time increases people's interest in learning how to code. So, gateway drug effect that has been mentioned at this conference before. But beyond, just beyond the act of turning coding into a kind of like easier thing that you can do without specific training, we've got a particular focus on making the developer experience as pleasant, efficient, foolproof, and unsurprising as possible. So for example, Python is a notoriously dynamically typed language, so we built a static type system that prevents you from crashing Python by trying to add text to a number. Like in this example, I have a number and a text variable, and I'm not even allowed to add the text variable to the number because we're enforcing types. Less bugs. Or if you rename a variable, we'll rename all references to it throughout the rest of your interview for you, which is not as easy to do in a plain text editor. So we're shipping like little features like this, little things to make the experience better and more cool every week. But beyond letting you build apps, our tool lets you share them without writing code. I don't want you to learn how to use Git to distribute what I've written and share it with the world. You can browse a library of open source apps that others have built, make changes, and republish them yourself with extremely fine-grained control over who gets to see them, run them, copy them, and edit them, just like on GitHub. As of a few weeks ago, we rolled out a marketplace layer to make it easier to leverage the incentives afforded by software. So if you're building on Docacon and you want to charge people to use your apps, either as a per use or as a monthly subscription, you can do it, but you're starting from scratch. So we built a suite of tools that manages all that for you. You can even open up your own app store, invite collaborators of your choice to publish their work under your brand's name. And as the curator and maintainer of the app store, you keep a small percentage of the earnings through the platform for yourself. Basically, the vision is we want to make it possible for you to quit your job and make a living, multiplying the leverage of your specific expert knowledge and your specific network by building and sourcing and maintaining apps at scale. Okay. So why should we do any of this? Why is it good? Probably anyone you ask would instinctively value collaboration as a virtue, but it's not necessarily good. For example, software collaboration made it possible to construct surveillance and law enforcement tools that can and are used for repression, or making social media as addicting as possible to sell as many ads as possible, which makes some people rich but the rest of us miserable. So I think that any serious thinker should, using reason, justify what they value. So it's our position that collaboration in legal at the scale of collaboration in tech is a good thing, because it can provide massive, untold, massive positive social externalities by letting legal aid and solo and small firm attorneys stand on the shoulders of giants. Classic quote here. Shout out to Isaac Newton. So here's an example. Today, a novice web developer could, by themselves, in a few days, deploy to the internet a simple version of Twitter, make posts, follow people. And this is possible because collaboration in tech has yielded rapid and continuous elevation in the level of abstraction that we use to write software. In the 1950s, developers were using assembly language, basically writing zeros and ones directly into computer memory. But nowadays, we have tools like Ruby on Rails and Amazon Web Services that let you build and ship full-featured things extremely quickly as an amateur. So if you want to run a legal aid clinic today or start a solo law firm today, you are starting from scratch. You are writing assembly code. But the vision is that in the not-so-distant future, you can, for free, deploy a customizable intake form that triages people's problems and assembles documents with no staff. If you're a private civil lawyer providing bread and butter civil legal services, you have no paralegals or secretaries or associates, you can now practice at the top of your license by just using off-the-shelf tools. You can tweak to your own needs and spend the rest of your time doing things that you actually need a lawyer's mind and training for. So to call back this diagram, imagine that CL is not a company but a solo lawyer. Running an ambitious general civil legal services firm. So I'm going to probably pay LexisNexis for research, and I'm going to pay Clio for customer management, and maybe I'll get a free tier Google or Dropbox account. But now, now we can also use a free and open source client intake form that's maintained by my local, statewide legal aid that can hook into my Clio account. And I'm going to pay a few bucks a month for document assembly apps for divorce and wills and business corporation that are maintained. These are the best in class apps maintained by local experts in my jurisdiction. And to top it off, maybe I roll my own satisfaction survey that I then publish to a closed invite-only group of other solo attorneys that all share their little hi to each other. And so I think that if this vision comes to life, that the outcomes for low and middle-income people that have unmet legal needs will be very good. Yeah, so in conclusion, I think we're in a really exciting space at a really exciting time, and I really think that the people in this room are going to be building the future, and we're going to have like a front row seat to seeing how it unfolds, and that's cool. So I want to yield the rest of my time to the audience for questions and feedback. But before I do, I just want to say thank you to Brooklyn Law School for donating a space and hosting the event. Thanks to Docacon, One Legal, Upsolve, and Radiant Law for sponsoring. Thank you all for coming and staying to the end. And finally, thank you to Jonathan Pyle. all your tireless and frankly superhuman work all these years. Yeah, so that's the website and Twitter, and if you want to download the slides, I put them on, like share them on Google Sheets. It's lowercase CLDC. But yeah, that's all I got.
I have one question. It gets to the fundamental incentives of collaboration and embracing the change, which I'm obviously pretty much everyone in this room sees the value of, but obviously, in so much collaboration in this field is very good for outcomes for low and middle income people with legal needs, but it's very disruptive to certain industries. I'll give you an example that's a little interesting. Law schools, for example, let's say a lot of these needs are being met by increased automation and the prevalence of technology that lets people access tools like this that serve their needs directly without a lot of redundancy in the labor that has to be done by low-level associates. Decreases the need for low-level associates, which in turn decreases the need for law schools, and so in a sense it's disruptive to that industry. And obviously there's a protectionism in the legal industry in general that you have to reckon with. So I guess my question is, how do you kind of reconcile those tensions moving forward in a way that it doesn't result in, for example, the protectionist legal industry trying to tamp down on this? What are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, I mean, ultimately, I'm not a lawyer, I'm a developer, I'm not an expert here, but to me, the reason why everyone always practices what they're saying, that this is not legal help, it's legal information, is because that it's really a defense mechanism that it seems to me like the defense mechanism the legal system is using to suppress what they see as a threat to their mode of their way of being. And I don't know, I think ultimately it bears out that acceleration in legal automation and legal tech and collaboration legal, if it's borne out that that's good for the people, then ultimately maybe it's naive optimism, but I think that the public opinion and the levers of power behind the legal industry are going to eventually just realize that what they're doing is not good.
Right.
Maybe it'll take generations, but I think it's inevitably going to happen.
Can I weigh in on that?
Please, yeah.
I've been teaching here for about 12 years. And about 10 years ago, 2 MIT engineers came to me and the students and said, can you help us build a platform that will allow for crowdsourcing of legal documents? And I said, so you're telling me you want us to build a platform that will take away the jobs of my students who are graduating? And they said, yes, that's what we want to do. And I was taken aback by it, but it took a few minutes for me to recognize this is inevitable, and better for us to be a law school that trains its students to recognize the inevitability of that and to go into a profession that could actually harness it and collaborate with it. If it's inevitable, when I graduated from law school, I was doing that crap. I was doing stuff that the computer does now, doing stuff that the paralegal should have been doing. And I thought this is not what my legal training was supposed to be about. My legal training was supposed to enable me to do that exactly, the piece of the puzzle that the computer cannot do. The subtle, nuanced middle stuff, the gray area stuff. And wouldn't it have been a great world if I went into my law firm at the time knowing that the computer was going to separate the ones and zeros and give me the facts, and I was going to do the sophisticated synthesis of those facts. And that is a beautiful place to be if we can actually train the lawyers. But you're right, we are pushing up against a guild that wants to hold sacred everything it's got. We see it happening in other countries. Like we see what's going on in Australia and the UK and around the world. Other countries will, if we don't, if the US doesn't embrace the new world of the lawyer in that world, other countries will, and they will have a justice system that surpasses ours, and they will learn either as pioneers or as followers.
It's a struggle, right? It's a class struggle. I mean, look at what happened to taxi drivers in New York, right? There is going to be carnage, right? But, I think if we're aware of what we're doing and we're mindful, and I think there is a way to have the best outcome for the most amount of people. And like maybe some lawyers and paralegals will have to live in the world they don't like, but ultimately, I think we're going forward.
I mean, there's just a huge unmet need.
Yeah.
So the system is already broken. It's already not working for so many people. Besides, there's an unmet need for the people who know they have a legal problem, let alone the ones that don't know. So how can this beat that and not, maybe flow more, have more people recognize I need a lawyer for this issue. So, actually drive more business. So we have to change the frame of thought of private attorneys. So this is going to drive business.
Historically, like New York, when I started practicing in '01, it was a misdemeanor UPL. Made a felony, so it's gotten worse. So that's a pushback. But at the same time, they've created this concept of the unbundled service. So I think that that's probably the doorway that's more adequate for like change. Because basically the only reason that people were able to do a lot of things as non-attorneys is because they were stripping their rules. And so, I think that as long as you have protectionist jurisdictions, you're going to have those situations. But I think the unbundled service, and that's what a lot of people I'm seeing today are already doing, I think that's the doorway into those situations without UPL. When it comes, what the difference between an unbundled service and UPL is a line. I don't think any of us, it's a moment by moment thing. But I think as long as you're looking at it that way, that you have a better shot of not getting pegged in an outside jurisdiction.
How do you see the role of innovation and rubbing up against the current law firms are pass-through legal entities, and so they can't, even if we trying to get that privatization, when you can't keep capital within firms. Does that make sense?
So there's actually a DC rule that allows you to have a law firm that is owned by non-lawyers. And so, this was true a couple of years ago. I'm not sure if it's still true, but at one point we entertained the idea that we would set up a law firm that was owned by non-lawyers, get venture capital in order to fund sort of the development of the technology systems. It's a little bit like the way they did it in Europe. Many other jurisdictions don't have it, but that might be a way to get funding.
Yeah, I mean,
Didn't like Amsterdam hack this? Isn't it like a company that's fully owned by a law firm, or the other way around?
yeah, you have a business in the front and a law firm in the back, kind of thing.
But I think all the funding has, at Atrium, I think all the funding has to go to the tax side.
Yes, yeah, and then the LLP is split up between whatever firms.
Oh, I mean, you can also make
Before, case file did it,
Yeah.
and failed. That's actually a real issue. I run a UK law firm. We're a company. We can save money. And our software developers have
I think it's also because I don't know if it's naive, but there's micro economic arguments you make. I'm a lawyer working 60 hours a week to make this much money. If I can work 30 hours a week and make the same amount of money, I'm going to do that, right? There's still an incentive to maybe not to make the most money, but to have the most leisure time. So there's, I think, other ways to.
The stuff they wrote, future professions and talked about. That's the ultimate is externalization. If you can externalize your activities, you don't disappear, right? You as a lawyer still continue to exist. You just don't have to do.
Yeah, your leverage is multiplied. I'm doing the same amount of work in a fraction of the time that I'm leveraging tech, which is infinitely scalable. Right.
I guess the main issue seems to be is that we're hoping that there's going to be all this unserved part of the market that might accept proper justice. That seems to be my experience has been that the complexities and gray areas that can pop up and demand powerful legal minds that all bring to bear on this thing will show up in $1,000 in controversy, small claims case sometimes. It will in $100 million.
Yeah.
In controversy, in litigation, and the problem is that the $1,000 claim is just not warranted. But our thinking is, at least my feeling has been going into this is like, well, 80% of the way to like perfect representation is better than
Better
the
than
zero
nothing,
you're getting
yeah.
now, right? But that's kind of a bitter pill to push onto the marketplace, where we're going to say like, if you won't accept this technology solution, some of you are going to get screwed. Some of you are going to get what ultimately amounts to not the ideal solution. That's got to be better than the alternative. Zero.
I mean, I think like the problem is like, we know some people want a 5-course meal
Yeah.
at the, the top chef in the city. But lots of people just want to have food. There's a market for that that just is not served right now. People can't pay for $300 an hour.
And I think that the people actually using it are going to feel that way. The problem is the people who are deciding whether or not they're going to let the masses have that are, I think, hiding behind this. Like, you're going to give them subpar services for nothing at all. And like, getting lobbying around that is going to be a problem with the UPL.
The assumption there is that if the lawyer is providing the service that it is.
Yeah, that's true.
And that is not empirically established.
Does everybody know about the sandbox, regulatory sandbox? I mean, that's like one good innovation in this UPL space, and then Washington State's doing some stuff the opposite way. That's kind of bad, but over-regulating is kind of.
So then also looking at LPs, so like it's.
My take on this whole question is, like, we're kind of bearish on AI and solving these gray area problems using neural networks. I mean, legal reasoning, I think, is abstract and kind of specific enough to our civilization that I think we're a ways away from automating that, right? But I think there are gains to be had by automating away the really dumb shit. Stuff that you really don't, I think lawyers are billing hundreds of dollars an hour to copy and paste like words into Word documents, right? So I think you get all that away, then you can really have lawyers spending a lot of time solving problems you really need human. And maybe it won't be affordable for a low, the lowest of the lowest, but if a middle class family on the margin can now afford to get whatever it is they need or whatever, right? Then I think that's it.
Is everybody familiar with Ray Kurzweil's stuff? And what's interesting, or at least I'm assuming, is well, if you talk to the genetic experts, right? What was it, 7-10 years ago, they were predicting it was going to be 100 years, crack the genome, and of course it just happened within years after those statements. I think we lawyers, we're analyzing the market today based on our previous experience with the legal market and bars. Like for myself, I'm definitely afraid when I form an LLC, for $199 goddamn dollars, somebody's going to complain to our disciplinary committee that I didn't tell them that as a doctor that they could have also formed a professional corporation, something stupid. So I have these past issues that chill my production in more advanced systems. But after reading Kurzweil's piece, I'm convinced, within 5 to 10 years, lawyers are almost going to be non-existent. What I mean by that is, lawyers aren't going to be able to regulate us anymore. We're actually generating more revenue on what I'm calling quasi-legal or non-legal than we are on the legal stuff. So if the bar actually came down on me and said, hey, we're going to disbar you, I'm going to shrug my shoulders and say, okay, keep on doing what I'm doing. We have a lot of good people here that understand the legal market pretty well. And, if you think of like legal as a pyramid with the very top being the litigation type stuff, and at the bottom you have the stuff that my firm's doing, the LLC formation, things like that. The smarter the systems, the Docacon is kind of pushing all of that stuff up that can be automated, right? Even at the litigation level, courts are overwhelmed. They're going to accept and adopt a lot of the stuff that we're doing. And so it's almost like I'm trying to build a firm now, assuming, the practice of law as we know it, and licensure and disciplinary committee type stuff is going on in 5 to 10 years, it seems. I know that seems a little crazy. When I'm at my bar in New Mexico or Illinois, I get a bunch of crickets. They have no idea what I'm talking about. It seems like this group does, the bigger question is how do we collaborate? And I appreciate everything that everybody's done today. I'm a little disappointed because I want to hear about like the machine learning aspect. It's because like even taking on the stuff we do, on bankruptcy even, right? There's times where bankruptcy might not be appropriate, even though they need it, right? There's that analytical piece, that cultural piece that somehow needs to be solved. And I'm not quite sure where or how we address that with DACA stuff. What's wrong with using a lawyer to solve that problem? Well, when you have 500 people that have that question this week, they're going to go elsewhere and get the answer, right? So we need to be able to answer that for them if we were going to get that business. That's what's wrong with having a lawyer involved with some of those decisions. I'm not trying to knock the lawyers, I'm one of them, but that's the issue that we have. If we can't give an answer immediately, with the price, if it makes sense, we'll lose the sale.
I just came back from the conference on AI and law in Montreal. Like that discussion came up, and I thought it was a really useful framework for thinking about where machine learning should fit in. And one of the speakers was saying, like, thinking about these as diagnostic tests. And right now, we might over rely on them as being the decision. But if we can build tools that help you go through and answer that question, gather all the facts about whether someone needs a bankruptcy or not, and then have a lawyer look at it, then maybe that is scalable. Like they're taking a few minutes to look at that test, the client's entered all the information, giving them back feedback, a human's making the judgment, but it's aided by all the work that the artificial intelligence.
I find as a lawyer to get questions from the client, sometimes they give garbage in, right? So that's what we need to develop is the algorithm so that we can tell when they're not really giving us the right answer.
And that part of that is also like a human-computer interaction problem, or like designing the questions right. Like that's something that's, I think, that would be a good session to have here too, is about that aspect.
But that data, that is really shareable, right? I mean, that's where, I would rather not share, stuff that is unique to my firm, but I sure like to share the unique stuff, to make sure that people are getting properly served, and benefit properly by the understanding of what their particular problem is. And then I'm just competing on solving the problem versus understanding.
That data, though, may be protected by the attorney-client privilege. You do not have the right to share it.
There's work on data commons though, to try and be able to have.
Yeah, because
I mean, that's
In
an
our-
arbitrary term. Wash it. What does that mean? Is it readily identifiable? And even if it's not readily identifiable today, it's like the genome. When you give your DNA to one of these companies, you don't know what tomorrow you will be able to read. And so, just because we don't understand the language of what's in there today, so just because you did best practices today doesn't mean that, that client information sitting out there in 2 years when there's some other innovation where they can come in and get metadata that makes the client readily identifiable, like opening yourself up to that sort of liability can be dangerous. Sometimes, people like they just run and do things, right? We are held to a different scrutiny as attorneys sometimes. They come for us because of that. So, it can be dangerous.
The one thing that I started practicing law in 2000, and I thought for sure by 2010, lawyers would be totally replaced by computer. Okay? So I think that, given the fact that I was that convinced and it didn't happen, I'm a little bit more circumspect on the amount of time that it will take to sort of move to the next level.
My take is there's a very low hanging fruit right now that is very low hanging and very cheap. That we can get pretty good results with stuff that thanks to tools that have taken. Docacon was what 3-4 years old, right? These are new tools, and they have made it now possible to get pretty good mileage out of them. We don't need a general AI.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Yeah.
We can keep it simple.
Exactly.
Because I think you can be successful in this industry using basic rule-based logic. I mean, you don't have to get fancy on it. So, because it's just, the bar is so low right now, right? So,
But I think some of that is because, you know, when you look at patents, if you look at the State Street decision, right, something has to be transformative for the software to get a patent. We're in an open source community. You don't have to worry about those things. So sometimes people are so worried about the commercial viability and the patentability of something, they're chasing some of these algorithms and logic that I don't think that we're stuck in that scheme. I think that that's a big deal. Done with what's happening here. It's unique in that regard. That's not a disadvantage. That's a great advantage.
I mean, hot docs have been around for 20 years. This is not doing anything really that hot docs wasn't able to do.
The difference is it's open source.
It's open source and
Right.
it's cloud-based.
Yeah.
It's platform, it's OS agnostic, so it's just lowering the cost of entry.
At this conference last year, I had a slide. I wanted to put it up, but I couldn't really put it. But it's that the scene from Shawshank Redemption where the guy's like crawling out of the sewage pipe and like breathing fresh air. And to me, it's like that whole sewage pipe is like old legacy systems, and the fresh air is Docacon. It's like we have to go through the sewage pipe to get to where we are. And you know, tools take a long time to evolve, and I think we're at the level now that I think the fact that there is an open source document assembly system in cloud-based open source system available now is a signal that lawyers are ready for this kind of tool.
I would also point out that Docassemble is actually more stable than a lot of these other tools. Right?
Yeah, because it turns out there's advantages to making things open source, even if you're a business is trying to make money.
And that's the other thing is Docassemble platform can be sold to lawyers just like hot docs. You know what I mean? This just you know, and probably the majority of them will. You know, not necessarily direct to non-lawyer. You can sell your Docassemble system as a platform. In fact, that's what I would do. So the lawyer can still
Dora, take notes.
That way lawyers can spend more time selling. Filling out forms.
Mine is more just a question for the people who put up these.
By the way, just to kind of like reality check, we have about 5 minutes before we're supposed to go. So just to wrap up.
I guess this is the general theme of like, there's all the software games, but then at some time I want to be insured that covers this. And I'm wondering what the conversations have been like with carriers to cover you, either on the I'm not a law firm, I'm just giving you information. What sort of feedback have you gotten from like, well, if you want to get coverage, then you need to do X, Y, and Z, and then same thing on the law firm side. We think that's giving you UPL exposure. You see malpractice insurance.
Yeah, I mean, I'm running a firm, so you know these are really tools. So for me, like there's some they're client-facing things. That's the advantage for me for hot dogs. One of the things I want to go about, we have sealed records things that we're doing now that's all new in New York. And so we have forms that we'll put out, they suck. I'm doing motions with references, and one of the plans we have is a lot of the clients we're looking at on the pro bono side are using literally like flip phones and just the text message capabilities and things to have the interviews. That's something Hot Docs doesn't do that. So there are advantages here for open source things where that would be great for us to deploy that in community-based situations. But running it as a firm gives me the advantage of we're just using it as a tool, even if it's client-facing, which a lot of the Hot Docs also isn't the case. You know, I might get an output document that sucks, but I'm getting client information, you know, as opposed to having to take that information, having, you know, the third party have to come in, transcribe it, or put it somewhere else. So, you know, that's the nice advantage to it. The other thing that I'm experimenting with is called CallJoy. It's a Google incubator technology. If any of you haven't seen it, it's basically a call attendant. The one difference between it and any other call attendant I've seen is you can actually have the person when they calls and picks up and greets them, it sends a text message link to them, and that's different. And so you could direct them to a library, you know, or to a website. You know, for me, it's directing them to a call concierge. We're still building that where it's a help. Do you want to do a sealed record, a divorce, or whatever? And they can click through and then go into where I want them to go. So that's a way to take somebody from the phone mechanism straight out. So if any of you haven't seen that, that might be a good way, not all integrations are APIs, right? It's a good way to integrate. Paul Joy, it's a new thing, literally I just found it a month ago. I think it's still in the experimental stages. It's a startup that's in a Google incubator.
It's also flat rate, which is cool.
Yeah, I think it's like $40 a month. They give you a phone number, which, their advantage is disadvantage that. We get a 212 number, so I have the second one, they own it. So 2 weeks, or 2 months, if there's some sort of payment problem, something happens, somebody else might get my number and all of the goodwill that I built. But, it's something you want to consider for your clients as a potential option, because it's also a type of integration.
Yeah, I don't know. I think there's a ton of stuff to talk about, and I'm glad that we had some discussion that a lot more time at the bar to continue to talk. But I just want to give Jonathan the opportunity to talk about it. Thank you.